Flat Earth Underground?
If you were to stop a random person on the street and ask them for their thoughts on propaganda, chances are they would begin to describe propaganda posters in war films from the early to mid-1900s. To a layman, this could easily be perceived as a positive reflection of an informed society, who knows the historical background and inherent dangers of propaganda when used on the unsuspecting public. However, under critical analysis, this actually reveals a much darker truth. While most people know what propaganda is, the alarming majority of people either strictly view it as a thing of the past or something as to which they are apparently immune. So if the target audience for propaganda to be the most effective is an unsuspecting public, the propaganda machine could easily be running at maximum output and could be quite efficient at morphing the views of the general public still to this day. The only question is, does propaganda still exist? And if so, what effect is it having on our society?
One of the most dangerous, unspoken things in existence in the world today is a media controlled by a very small group of corporate entities. Every day, we are constantly lied to and constantly told what to think. And most of us never even realize it. It's become a duty and call to action to wake people up to this reality. Before blindly listening to what's hurled at you, everyone has a personal responsibility to at least know what's going on before handing your mind over to the many forms of media indoctrination. In short, wake up. It becomes a frustrating experience to wake people up from the matrix, so to speak, and constantly overhear people all around still completely misdirected and mired in false narratives. The day after the attack in Paris, for example, almost everyone immediately began talking about how crazy people in the world are today, changing their profiles to French flags and immediately posting support and condolences. And the irony was that no one had a clue about what really happened or why the entire world was made to watch. In addition to that, most people are lazy, distracted by a capitalistic existence, don't know they are brainwashed, and most times don't know what they are doing or why. Your thoughts are not your own, and you're being led by the hand every step of the way. Most people openly and defiantly do not trust their governments. People know better. However, simultaneously, they overtly trust each and everything their government does, says, and presents anyway. Because most people trust corporate news narratives where they get most of their information and never question any of it. Most people are still completely unaware that governments orchestrate and or stage events all the time. This was always done throughout history and is still maintained today. This is nothing new under the sun. You can't even explain this to sheeple, because you might become the one under attack or ridiculed for trying to tell people the real truth. Unfortunately, we have a world of people who don't understand how the world works. The media is not for information, it's for indoctrination. It's owned and operated by a very small group, and the objective of news media is compromised. It's not about informing you about what's going on in the world. The main function is to carry out agendas and control what you think, how you behave, and what you believe.
Well, I've been a journalist for about 25 years, and I was educated to lie, to betray, and not to tell the truth to the public. And it is not right what my colleagues do and have done in the past, because they are bribed to betray the people, not only in Germany, all over Europe. The reason
Despite the fact that lots of our news is corporate-controlled fiction, we have been brainwashed to accept the news as the infallible truth. We are a society of drones who do not know how to think critically. And because of our media brainwashing, things often go very wrong, impacting the lives of citizens irreparably. All day, every day. Just a few corporations cooperate each other's talking points, edit all the news, and dispatch everything you're meant to hear on all networks. There are several video compilations showing you just that.
Who are you really shopping for this holiday season? It's okay, you can admit it, if you've bought an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it if you bought an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it, Todd. If you bought an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it. If you bought an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it. If you brought an item or 2 or maybe 10 for yourself. It's okay, you can admit it. If you bought an item or 2.
It's okay, you can admit it. If you bought an item or 2.
2 or maybe 3 or 4, maybe even 10 items for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it, can admit it, can admit it, can admit it.
A lie repeated 1,000 times becomes the truth. The man who said that even proved it. The lie became part of himself and the system he served. His name was Joseph Goebbels. He was Nazi Germany's Minister of Propaganda. The myths that he created exist to this day.
Such Machiavellian activity requires a disguise, which is why propagandists call themselves the public relations industry. But do not be fooled. Public relations and propaganda are interchangeable, and it is the massive public relations industry that is designed to alter perception, reshape reality, and manufacture consent.
A Hollywood set designer was brought in to create a $200,000 backdrop for official war briefings.
Today, America alone has more public relations propagandists than reporters, which means that nearly half of what people in the West hear, see, or read is written by professional liars. Professional liars whose job it is to keep people in front of their televisions, reading gossip magazines, eating vast amounts of toxic food, and shopping, always shopping, for the latest fashions and trends. Fashion, celebrity, sex, music. We will reveal the methods used by the propagandists to control populations on behalf of their owners. Although these rich and powerful owners only make up 1% of the world's population, they have mastered the use of propaganda over 99% of the world's population, turning them into consumer slaves who work harder and harder to buy things they don't need. These consumer slaves are also made to pay taxes to their government, money which is used to develop new weapons for the pernicious invasions and occupations of other countries. Has this man just broken a world record? Has he just created a medicine that can save thousands of lives? Perhaps he's been chosen to represent his community in some way. No, this man has just purchased a telephone. And these people, what is making them scream and cry with such profound joy? They are on a television program where they are receiving consumer items. This for some boots. This for some clothes shelves. And this hysteria is not because they have found God, but because they are receiving sneakers. The propagandist knows that an individual has a natural desire to be on a winning side and appear to fit in with the crowd. One of the easiest ways to achieve this is to make them chant favorable, yet deliberately vague slogans like, "This changes everything."
This is going to change everything.
Just do it. I'm loving it. Or support our troops. The point of slogans like support our troops is that they don't mean anything. That's the whole point of good propaganda. You want to create a slogan that nobody's going to be against and everybody's going to be for. Nobody knows what it means because it doesn't mean anything. With this in mind, propagandists can provide simple answers to complex problems and ask for approval without question.
Either you're with us, either you love freedom, or you're with the enemy.
They can use this method to sell phones, violence, cosmetics, or even false wars, like the unwinnable war on terror announced by these degenerates, and the hypocritical war on drugs announced by this master criminal, who is awarding a medal to this man for joining the war on drugs, despite this man being a drug addict.
The goal of propaganda is to form a consensus to a standard set of beliefs by influencing and altering the attitudes of a population towards a specific cause, position, or political agenda. As someone who has taken a great interest in human psychology, as well as studying marketing at university, can't help but see a correlation between propaganda and today's advertising techniques. I mean, think about it. Both advertising and propaganda techniques try to persuade the target audience by hitting them on an emotional level. They don't deny this either. Dr. Robert Heath, a professor at the University of Bath and a pioneer in establishing the value of emotion in advertising, states, "My research with David Brandt and Angus Nairn shows that emotional response toward advertising plays an important part in building a strong brand. The basis on which metacommunication operates is entirely emotional, conditioning your feelings and building strong relationships. An ad that resonates emotionally is one that will build a stronger, better brand over time." You see, advertising agencies don't just know that their ads can subliminally affect people on an emotional level, they orchestrate their entire marketing campaigns around it. If manipulating people's emotions in order to sell them on something, and to structure how their brand is perceived in the minds of the general public, doesn't sound like Propaganda 101 to you, consider this. Joseph Goebbels was the Reich Minister of Propaganda in Nazi Germany from 1933 to 1945. As part of Hitler's Rotzensthag policy, coordinating the whole population in Nazi Germany behind Hitler, Goebbels drew inspiration for Nazi propaganda by studying the way advertising companies worked in America. Furthermore, Goebbels used his position within the Nazi hierarchy to influence newspapers, the cinema, theaters, art galleries, and radio broadcasts. What's more shocking is how proud the American Advertising Agency was about this at the time. The July 20th, 1933 issue of Printers, Inc., one of the lead advertising trade journals of its time, speaks approvingly of Hitler's methods and gives alarming insight into just how closely related propaganda is to advertising. The article stated, "As is well known, the word propaganda in Germany is used synonymously with the word advertising. Although in this country and in Great Britain propaganda has the unfortunate connotation of being free instead of being paid for, this distinction does not exist in Germany." Basically, this 1933 issue of Printers, Inc. is saying that the only difference between propaganda and advertising is funding. The reality is, propaganda and advertising are cut from the same cloth, and no one in their right mind would deny the existence of advertising in today's world. So why would anyone assume that propaganda no longer exists? Propaganda is a form of biased communication aimed at promoting or demoting certain views, perceptions, or agendas. And just as marketing campaigns on behalf of a given brand uses sinister means of emotional manipulation to sell their product, so too do propaganda campaigns subvert our consciousness in order to sell us on a foreign narrative and a means to manipulate the consensus. Really, the question of whether propaganda still exists today seems redundant in a world built on television slogans. So the high plausibility of propaganda's modern-day existence, based simply on the fundamentals of advertising and reasoning that one might have a political agenda to push, seems so firmly grounded on logic and reason that it really should be assumed a certainty. But both the threat and true effectiveness of propaganda is dependent on coordination. If a wide variety of people with diverse views on varying topics all own and contribute to different areas of media, regardless of how deliberate a potential propaganda campaign may be, the views expressed in that campaign will be canceled out by the opposition. Conversely, if there's a small group of people controlling the national narrative, it's more likely that the views held by those individuals will penetrate into the messages they present and ultimately make its way into the public's consciousness. And that's just assuming the people in control of media agree on a particular topic. That's not accounting for deliberate propaganda. If you take that same smaller group of people in control of the media and do account for deliberate propaganda, it's just a matter of time before the public opinion sways in favor of the national narrative being presented to them, because the opposition will be non-existent. Now here's the scary part. In 1983, 90% American media was owned by 50 separate companies. By 2012, that same 90% of media was controlled by only 6 companies. And some modern-day figures have that number down as low as 5. But as damning as the consolidation of media corporations is, it lacks deliberate intention and coordination. That is, until you Google the Bilderberg Group. The Bilderberg Group is made up of 120 to 140 powerful individuals from around the world who meet every year to discuss policy. Oh, and by the way, these meetings are top secret and completely closed to the public. This chart from a few years back links the attendees' connections with corporations, charities, policy groups, and media giants. And don't even get me started on the annual meetings that take place at Bohemian Grove. Clearly, these individuals share similar views and are working to coordinate their efforts. So everything we've covered so far in this video would suggest that propaganda is not only as real as it was back in the early to mid-1900s, but that it's more relevant today than ever before. And so far, we've just been arguing off of deductive reasoning. We haven't even explored an example yet. Now, I could easily point to examples of propaganda in media related to warping the public's perception on politics.
What if the two-party system was actually a mechanism used to limit so-called public opinion? What if there were more than 2 sides to every issue, but the 2 parties wanted to box you into a corner, one of their corners?
Propaganda used to demean Christianity.
But then, Jesus, which religion should our family be?
601, they're all complete crap.
Thank you.
Propaganda to warp public perception on gun rights.
One thing that I think is clear with young people and with adults as well is that we just have to be repetitive about this. It's not enough to simply have a catchy ad on a Monday and then only do it every Monday. We need to do this every day of the week and just really brainwash people into thinking about guns in a vastly different way.
Or propaganda related to the glorification of drugs.
That was him testifying today in the House with other leading medical experts about this apparently newly controversial issues of vaccines that should never be controversial at all.
But the one that I'd like to use for this illustration is propaganda related to the LGBT community. A recent Gallup poll shows the support and opposition statistics of gay marriage between 1996 and 2015. According to this chart, the number of people in opposition of gay marriage has dropped from 68% to 37%, while the figures for those in favor of gay marriage has skyrocketed from 27% to a majority 60% in just 19 years. That is a major shift in societal norms. Be honest with yourself. Whether you're in favor or in opposition of gay marriage, do you really think that this drastic change in social perception was purely organic? The Gay Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation, aka GLAAD, has evaluated the quantity and quality of LGBT characters during primetime television since 2006. Their stated objective is to push for positive representation and to increase the amount of representation. The 2015 GLAAD ratings and score, based on the percentage of LGBT-inclusive original programming hours during primetime television, shows that programming is at an all-time high on broadcast and cable networks. Folks, the LGBT community currently makes up only 3.4% of the population. So why is 8% representation considered a failing grade and 28% representation considered merely adequate? A typical approach for indoctrination through the use of propaganda is as follows. First, the viewer is exposed to the information and is made conscious of the subject matter. From there, the subject matter, in this case the LGBT narrative, is assimilated to the individual on an emotional level, usually by way of a third-party participant. An example of this would be a beloved sitcom character's persona reflected in the subject matter. While the viewer experiences positive feelings towards that particular character, they are also subconsciously assimilating positive feelings towards the agenda being pushed. This links the orchestrated narrative with the viewer on an emotional level. The final step is repetition. The more the viewer is exposed to this, the stronger the emotional bond becomes, and thus the harder it is to break. This results in a permanent distortion of the individual's views, assuming they held opposing views beforehand. Further implemented techniques, as is the case with the LGBT agenda, also occasionally include a demonization of the opposition. The fact is, we are bombarded with propagandized messaging every single day, and the number one source for that indoctrination is our television sets. Watching TV puts the viewers into a highly susceptible sleep-like hypnotic state, largely caused by the screen flicker that lowers the viewer's brainwaves into what is called an alpha state. This alpha state of mind is what you'd normally associate with meditation or deep relaxation. And most people enter into this state of mind within 30 seconds to 3 minutes of television viewing. When in this hypnotic state, the information that you are exposed to is downloaded directly into your subconscious mind, where your existing beliefs are altered to form new beliefs without you even noticing. This is a very suggestive state of mind in which the right side of your brain tends to not critically analyze incoming information as it normally would. Again, check out the links in the description for more information. The average American watches 2 to 5 hours of television a day. Over the course of an average lifetime, that figure amounts to 9 years of a person's life. That's 9 years of indoctrination dedicated to programming every single man, woman, and child in this country. Now you may be sitting there thinking to yourself, but isn't propaganda illegal? Or wouldn't the government try and stop propaganda? Well, as it turns out, no. Back in 2012, an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA, proposed by Mac Thornberry, a Republican from Texas, and Adam Smith, a Democrat from Washington, effectively nullified the Smith-Mundt Act of 1948, which explicitly forbid information and psychological operations aimed at influencing U.S. public opinion. This amendment effectively allows the United States government to legally use, quote, information operations on the American public. These information operations, or IOs for short, are loosely outlined as incorporating, quote, the integrated employment of electrical warfare, computer network operations, psychological operations, military deception, and operations security in concert with specified supporting and related capabilities to influence, disrupt, corrupt, or usurp adversarial human and automated decision-making while protecting our own. And the primary purpose for IOs is to, quote, shape the essential narrative of a conflict or situation and thus affect the attitudes and behaviors of the targeted audience. So not only does the government permit propaganda to be used against the American public, they've actually taken special precautions to legally use propaganda on the general public themselves. People, propaganda is the most effective on an unsuspecting public. If you're the type of person to limit propaganda's existence to the pages of a history book, or think that you've somehow evaded any form of propaganda and its effects on your beliefs, then you are actually the perfect candidate for the propaganda machine. Now, I know it's difficult to consider that your beliefs may not be entirely your own, but it's important to try. The first step to overcoming any form of indoctrination is to be aware of your own susceptibility and to take an honest, introspective look into your own beliefs. Because propaganda is most effective when combined with emotional stimuli, it's important to analyze your own emotional responses to conflicting information that you may be presented with. In other words, if someone says something to you that you disagree with, and you feel an intense emotion in response to what they've said, chances are the beliefs that you hold on that particular topic are intimately tied to an artificial emotive response ingrained in your mind through years of indoctrination.
At a 1991 closed-door meeting of fellow internationalists, billionaire and former CFR chairman David Rockefeller praised his media allies, but his confidence that his words would not leave the room was later broken.
We are grateful to the Washington Post, the New York Times, Time Magazine, and other publications whose directors have attended our meetings and respected their promises of discretion for almost 40 years. It would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subject to the bright lights of publicity. But the world is now more sophisticated and prepared to march toward a world government.
Need to let them know what's going on, baby. Time to tell them.
When I'm in the streets, I always remain cautious.
Let's go.
Every society honors its live conformists and dead troublemakers. I'm the son of Satan, sculpted the culture of the ancients. Burn me at the stake with my left hand stuck in the matrix. I'm the apex. I steal science off of spaceships. Blackwater contractors captured off of camcorders. Aftermath, slaughter, violent massacre. Masters of order, burning effigies of presidents and American flags. Veterans clash for the chance to sell terror for cash. Babylon destroyed the base of Migdosh. Death codes, murder squads, exploding churches and burning mosques. Throw your dice, now your destiny's cast. And he sees a war planet over centuries past. And the mysteries remain unsolved. Colossal pyramids on Mars. Visitors beyond the scriptures of Allah. God is on the side of the ones with money and large armies. Pray for death amongst these brainwashed zombies. Society is brainwashed.
I bet you can't see what I can see.
That's right.
There's a few things we have to address. I bet you can't see what I can see.
When I'm in the streets, I always remain cautious.
Good, God damn.
November 5th, 2001, less than 2 months after 9/11 occurred. The infamous William Cooper was murdered, ex-naval intelligence officer. But now author of Behold the Pale Horse. He paid the cost. I can't say that I agree with everything that he wrote, but I admire him for speaking his mind though. Never holding his tongue for nobody. Our society is brainwashed. Guns in each other's faces for the same lies. Same everything and same nothing. Same bullshit materialism. The third world man's luxury. This false flag fuckery. An AIDS-infested junkie. Your lady, your liberty. Can't fuck me. Can't touch me. The Black Pope, Superior General. Tim Oscar riding like a pirate from Inglewood. Bring the hood up to a hovering mothership. They already made the switch to the one world government.
I bet you can't see what I can see.
That's right.
There's a few things we have to address. I bet you can't see what I can see.
When I'm in the streets, I always remain cautious.
Good, God damn.
Amongst the ivory tower witch doctors, witness explosion on the Groom Lake landing strip. The silicon source of a abandoned ship. Famine gripped the planet with the gigantic satanic fists. Believed to be linked to Al-Qaeda through his sandwich business. I don't advise you to believe these could be camera tricks. All I'm saying is to ask questions, amateurs. What Hollywood tries to pass off as a fantasy might have already happened in actuality, and vice versa. If Jesus Christ was a person, who was Mithra? Who was Krishna? Who was the first to be baptized, crucified, resurrected, betrayed and made into a martyr for someone else's redemption? Old men start wars for young dudes to die in Madison Avenue, telling you what you should be buying. Religion and science always profess peace, but in the end, who created the deadly war machine society is?
I bet you can't see what I can see.